Thanks a lot for making it so far. Now, Bay Area traffic, especially in the evening and mornings, it's not friendly. So, thanks a lot. My name is Biren Gandhi. For the last 6 to 9 months, I've been on this new venture, Speak to IoT, which is exactly in line with the topic of today. That's why it falls very much aligned with what we are trying to achieve with respect to the industry at large on all the three domains: IoT, voice, and artificial intelligence. Before I embarked on this venture, in my past life, I was with Cisco for almost 7 years, working on the corporate strategy side of the house for Cisco, trying to do a lot of due diligences, mergers, acquisitions, investments. Not only that, but more of an internal technology incubation as well with respect to the disruptive technologies. So I was leading the drone program for Cisco for almost last 2 years. In addition to that, we were exploring the blockchain, AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, IoT, fog computing. I mean, all the buzzwords pretty much you can say, right? What can be done? Every industry is hungry for that, and Cisco is no different in that regard. And prior to Cisco, my baseline experience was fortunate, humbled enough to be part of Facebook's early journey in 2005-06 timeframe, when they were celebrating 25 million users as opposed to billions these days. And after that, I had done first attempt at my initial startup as well, leaving Facebook prematurely before all my stocks vested. So you can imagine how crazy I am. But hindsight is 20/20 always. No regrets. It's always a learning experience on what you can do, what you can achieve. That startup didn't go well. It was downturn in the Silicon Valley 2008-2009 timeframe. So things were very different than how they are today. And then I joined Zynga as a social gaming company as a CTO of a bunch of different gaming studios and network infrastructure products, taking care of highly scalable infrastructure systems in Amazon AWS and other cloud systems. So previously it was in the in-house data center, and then we moved on to the cloud. So I was part of that transition and journey. So today what we're going to talk about is how does the future look like? Especially in the IT industry where things are moving very fast at an unprecedented pace. So how do we go about doing that? So this is one of my favorite quotes from Niels Bohr, quantum physicist and Nobel laureate. It's a funny thing, prediction is difficult, especially it's about the future. I mean, it's a controversial statement in a way, but how true that is. Nobody can really predict what things are, where things are going to go, how things are going to appear, where they are going to end up. But what we can do is at least navigate our way with information. So we can collect the information from the environment, from the people, especially in the Silicon Valley. We are fortunate to be surrounded by like-minded individuals who are at the cutthroat of where the technology world, where the world in general is evolving, is reaching towards. So let's take a real pop quiz. So what I'm going to show following this particular one is a series of 18 slides, 18 pictures, real quick. Your job is to identify what's common. Common ingredient, common element, whatever is common you can find out in all those 18. We are in 2018, so I just picked 18 as the number. Let's see if we can figure that out. So iPad, of course, Google Chrome, Snapchat, Airbnb, Spotify, Oculus Rift, Stripe, Instagram, Kickstarter. Looks familiar, right? All of these names. The smartphone GPS, which is ubiquitous. Lyft, Pinterest, Square, 4G LTE, the mobile Wi-Fi wireless. Venmo payments, Uber, and everybody's favorite, WhatsApp and Slack. Right. So these are 18 very well-known, popular today. Many of the startups literally live on these products, including Slack and Square and a lot of them, you name it, right? And a lot of us are, for our travel needs, we rely on Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and other things, right? So what's common in? They're new. Very good. So since he answered, yeah, it's but it's a very funny thing. We are talking about, okay, let's try to decide like what's going to happen, how is the future going to look like. And if we look at carefully, none of these 18 popular companies were around just 10 years ago. Like in 2008, not a single one out of these 18 were around. Even iPad came in 2009. So if technology has moved so far in the last 10 years, what we can think for sure and what we can say for sure about the future is it's even going to go even faster the way it's evolving. So we can definitely say the technology change itself is accelerating. We used to quote like Moore's law, like we are in the vicinity of Intel, right? So we used to quote Moore's law that it's doubling every decade and all, but people say, hey, that law is dead. It's like things are accelerating and saturating at the same time on different dimensions. Some things are saturating, some things are accelerating. So as this picture says, these are, by the way, logarithmic graphs. So when a linear line inside here, it's actually exponential growth curve. So if you look at on any of those axes, right, for example, magnetic data storage, so the growth in DNA sequencing or internet backbone, or even like wireless data, pay per dollar, like whatever, performance per dollar, whatever you are paying, how much you are gaining in return in terms of speed, in terms of bandwidth, in terms of whatever value you are gaining. Everything is exponentially rising for many, many decades. And now we are no different that way. So if you just look at this thing, right, it's a cool thing. Many of you might have seen it. It's no secret. So airline industry took like 68 years to gain 50 million user count. And if you fast forward, like from automobile to telephones and electricity and all the way, the bottom is all the technology area primarily. So see how much difference does it have? It's like a scale. It's an order of magnitude difference almost. Right? So, and Pokemon Go, right? 19 days, less than a month to reach 50 million users. And I've seen such crazy growth at many social games when I was at Zynga as well, all the farm wheels and the city wheels of the world. I mean, it's like really the hockey stick. Hockey stick is also an understatement for that kind of a growth. So literally, things can and will grow exponentially. If we go way back, 1946, the very first general purpose computer, ENIAC. It occupied like significant size, right? 1,800 square feet and weighed 30 tons. And $5.5 million of those days. And see the processing power? 5,000 operations per second. Whoa, what a phenomenal performance at that time, right? Fast forward to today's ordinary off-the-shelf, this greeting card that plays some audio jingles when you open it up, happy birthdays and all those things. And look at the spec. It's 800 times faster than that ENIAC. 1.1 million times less expensive and 1.7 million times it's smaller in footprint. So if we have to develop a computer like this back in the old days, how much would it cost it? ENIAC took $5.5 million. This greeting card would have taken $4.4 billion of yours and my money, taxpayers' money, to develop back in the days. That's how far we have come across. And it's not just the computation, not just along all the axes. Computation is just one part of one example of it. The storage, the networking side, like you take any industry, we have come a long way in terms of exponential growth over the last few decades. Artificial intelligence is no different. So if you look at the state of AI, the very first time the IBM's the chess beating machine, the Deep Blue, when Gary Kasparov was beaten in 1996, that was kind of the beginning of the new AI era of like competing against humans. And then the Jeopardy beating machine, and then recently in January to this year, the CMU people, the Libratus machine. That was unique. So that was meant to beat poker. Now, earlier gaming competitions against humans, like whether it's a chess or a game of Go or anything, the machine was entirely able to see the full game board. And it was able to compute every single possible move, your own move as well as the opponent's move, and able to just calculate. It was more of a calculation in less time. Poker was unique in the sense that machine was not able to see the full view, the full picture at all. So just like a poker player, you are able to see your own cards. It required like bluffing as well to a certain degree, discovering the bluffs of others and making a pattern recognition on top of that to win. But over a 20-day competition period, this machine, the Biren, was able to beat world's top 4 champions at poker all out, like 0 against everyone, right? So it was like, and people were betting on humans to win, but all the bettors actually completely lost because the machine actually did way better than anybody else was expecting. And more recently, IBM's debater machine. So that is able to actually debate one step further from the poker. It's like completely unknown topics, not anything kind of a pre-learned or pre-specified or pre-hinted in any way. Randomly pulling the information and understanding the human context, understanding the context of the argument, the defensive argument and offensive argument, and a lot more. So it's very interesting how far we have come across. One more example, the Google released the game-playing AlphaGo machine. But later on, they released this AlphaGo Zero system also. So the difference between AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero is AlphaGo Zero had literally zero learning upfront in terms of historical games or anything. So they just fed the rules of the game, nothing else. It was more of a self-learning system on its own. And look at how fast it was learning. So it started like with zero knowledge on 0 days, but within just 3 days, it was able to reach the level of that very first one, which Lee Sedol was defeated in the game of Go. And in 21 days, it defeated all the world champions, and in 40 days, it was pretty much undefeatable. The ultimate state of any game-playing machine. And it all started with absolutely zero language, no prior. I think that's the key, with no human intervention and no historical data. So this is the state of AI systems we are going to deal with in the future. System can entirely learn on its own as it moves along without any historical data. You're just feeding the rules of any situation, constraints, and system is able to figure out the best possible way, best possible winning move, and learn from its own mistakes as well as opponents' mistakes and figure things out. So it's pretty amazing. But the whole AI thing, it's not new actually. If you look back, more recent computational advantages, they have promoted AI very much in the last 15-20 years. But back in the old days, I mean, we have seen the factory robots in the 70s and 80s, and there were some layoff news also about the Foxconn laying off 60,000 people, and warehouse robots, like some videos of Alibaba warehouse, like which is managed by just 30 robots and like 0 humans, pretty much. Those are circulating, and all of the other your favorite media sites, including like Netflix and Facebook, and everyone says like recommendation, you might like this, you might like that. So all sort of recommendation engines and everything, right? It's some form of AI, some form of data science. The term is very generic. The AI doesn't mean like it's all, everything is like super high top. Very little thing, facial recognition or like identifying yourself into digital images across like millions and millions of photos. That's also AI. And AI is not limited to just fun things. We are actually putting our lives in the hands of AI for many, many years. In the aviation industry, for example, there was a report by New York Times in 2015. On average, Boeing 777 pilots, they manually operate the aircraft only for 7 minutes, entire flight, only for 7 minutes. And that's only during the takeoff and landing. So transatlantic flight coming from London to New York, pilots are actually touching and paying attention only for 7 minutes on more than 7 hours flight. And whether we like it or not, that's the reality. And the other part is the Airbus pilots even spend half. So it's like, wow, 3.5 minutes on average, that's it. That's how planes are being flown. I mean, they are fully automated today, almost. Right? Humans are there. Same thing goes like Elon Musk. I was there when he released, and I actually took a ride that very same day. He just did a software upgrade and self-driving car, Tesla, the very first day. It's scary. It was ready, all the sensors, everything was there. It's like ready to go. We just flip a switch and boom, it's on. So that's the kind of world we are living in. And not just like all these life-saving situations or transportations, even in IT, like near and dear to our hearts, right? There are many more applications and use cases for AI that are emerging. Security particularly is very, very critical. A lot of people are actually depending on AI for security, especially the dynamic parts of it, right? Security used to be like static and boring things, but now it's every day, every minute, it's a new challenge. Or validating whether somebody is a genuine, authentic, authorized person to enter a building. I mean, all those key cards of the past, RFIDs, now they can be spoofed. So how do you still make sure using secondary, tertiary mechanisms that yes, this is the person, is genuine, he's allowed, he or she is allowed to enter this premise at this so and so time. So that the AI is really playing a pivotal role in all of the IT operations, not just like big things of games and other things. But that brings the question, like whether all these advances in AI, the explosion, is it actually bringing us closer to the singularity point? Some of you might already be aware, but singularity point, the way it's defined is human intelligence typically grows linearly versus this machine intelligence. It started late but grows exponentially. And there is a crossover point, the point of singularity, beyond which the machine intelligence will be unbeatable. And there are some doubts as well. There are debate groups and big shots, like one side like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and other folks are fighting over like what's going to be the singularity, whether it's going to happen in reality or it's not going to happen. Right? But the point is, the machines are going to be so intelligent that they are going to surpass the human intelligence. And it's already starting. We are seeing those symptoms in the day-to-day life, like all the mundane jobs, like repetitive tasks, they're already like automated, and human jobs are being cut and chopped off, and like new areas are evolving. So, are we accelerating to singularity? We don't know, but at least the movement is definitely on that side. We are actually moving faster to that accelerity, or the point of singularity. Actually, we are accelerating to that point. But the good part is, AI is just one part of the bigger picture. It's not everything. There are other parts as well, which may be scarier, but they are equally important to touch upon. And that brings us to the next part. Is like if AI is basically it's a brain, the centerpiece, which churns, takes in lots and lots of data, and churns and runs algorithms and figures out and rules and makes judgments and calls and call shots. But where is AI getting all that information from? So that's where the senses, just like a human brain and human senses, AI and IoT relationship happens. So the Internet of Things, all the vast network of physical and virtual sensors and actuators, which are increasingly connected to the Internet every day in and day out, every move is being watched, whether we like it or not. Every movement is being tracked, every browsing activity. I mean, yesterday we had discussion, one of my friends and I were discussing. It says your entire history, full history on Google is captured. You can browse and delete it also. I mean, Google is now providing to delete and download that, but every single website, every single search query which I type, no matter from where, from my mobile browser, from my desktop browser, doesn't matter, it's captured. What sites I visited, it's captured. So every single thing is being monitored. So this massive, hyper-connected world that we are living in, we are growing in actually, that is providing all the intelligence for the artificial intelligence system to survive, thrive, and become more and more powerful. So IoT is equally capable, just like AI, IoT is equally capable, and it's actually providing all the trigger elements for AI to function in a more powerful way. Many of you might have seen this picture. It's an old picture, at least like 5 or 6 years old back. When we started IoT at Cisco, we had released a version of this picture originally. It's still valid. It says 50 billion devices by 2020 are expected to be connected on the internet. We'll see how much is the real count, but it's definitely in billions. But this key part, the IoT inception, somewhere in 2008, 2009 timeframe, that's where that crossover point happened. So when the number of connected devices surpassed the human population on Earth. So more devices, less people. That's what happened for the very first time over there. And ever since, the growth of IoT has been exponential. We are seeing increasingly connected, all the wearables and smart home gadgets, and you name it, everything is being increasingly connected. I mean, the cars themselves, cars were always computers on wheels, but they were still self-contained. They were not as much connected as they are. But now they are all software upgradable and remotely controllable, hackable also to a certain degree. So those things are more and more being connected. And we see like there are many areas this IoT affects, right? It's so three distinct areas. So one is very common to understand is like consumer IoT. We live in wearables, like all the sensors. We see, look around the cameras and proximity sensors and all that. So that's one part. Second part is the industrial IoT piece, which is all the big machines and robots and fully automated and all that. So that's the second part. The third part, which is not very popular in discussions, is enterprise IoT. And that's where all the back-end IT systems, data centers, the cloud, the IoT related to those aspects of our day-to-day life, they are captured in that part. But why does it matter? I mean, why should IoT matter at all? I mean, why should we even be talking about IoT in the first place? What's the big deal? And there are serious reasons for that. So, what IoT provides is very clear articulation of three value-added provisions. So it provides new sources of monetizations, new revenue streams and all on one side, because like new solutions can be carved out together. If you do this, you can do that. If you do this. So multiple entities are being connected. That somebody walks in the room, lights turn on, and nobody is detected, no presence, human presence is detected in the room, lights automatically turn off, right? So that's like a smart light or a proximity sensor powered light. So that's one aspect. Second part is it increases the productivity. So for the same dollar amount, for the same time, same set of resources, it allows companies to achieve much more. So increased productivity. And the third part is all the experience, changing the end user, stakeholder experience completely. So I mean, it's nothing but it's a common sense. If we look at it, either it affects the top line, which everybody cares that, hey, where are my revenue pipeline? Affects the bottom line, minimizes that, which also people care. And third part is engagement. The end user, customer, stakeholder engagement, providing them with more information, data, insights. And that's the reason why IoT is becoming more and more popular, as we see, and it's becoming more pivotal in the whole, this trio of AI, IoT, and voice. If you look at it, it's not only the connected devices on the very first scene, all the way goes from the device connection to data sensing, communication, and analysis value and human values. Ultimately, it touches the human value. And that's the critical part. Sometimes, like while discussing IoT, the Internet of Things, we forget about the human aspect. But if you go back to the original roots, the original definition of IoT had these four elements. It's not things only. It's people, process, data, and things. So even though we generally call it Internet of Things, ultimately it's Internet of people. How does it affect the people? How does these pieces of technologies allow people to work better, improve the qualities of their lives, or whatever the metric we are talking about, like help the humanity in some way at the end of the day? That's the goal. So IoT has all these multiple elements, not just things. Things are very visible, very tangible, physical aspect of it. That, hey, you need to connect the sensor with the Wi-Fi and it works. Okay, I'm connected to the cloud and boom, it works. All my files are in Box and Dropbox and all, it works. Okay, that's very easy to understand in the physical terms. But there are non-physical terms, processes as well, for example, and data as well. Where do you do the data processing? That's really tricky. And we have been flip-flopping as an industry at large from decade to decade. Originally, it was like your small PCs. Then the centralized computers came in. Then again, the desktop powerful PCs came back, all the computing power, not from the centralized server to your desktops. And then again, the cloud came back. And then mobile coming back to. So it's always a race between it's a centralized computing or a distributed computing. Centralized computing or distributed computing. And we are flip-flopping on that. So what IoT provides is a whole new model called fog computing in between. So hey, why should you always fight about one extreme versus the other? Cloud is up there and ground is up there, so fog can be anywhere in between. So technically, you can run your computations anywhere in between cloud and your edge device. So that's the notion. So new kind of data models, new kind of processing models are coming out by virtue of this IoT adoption. Some of the interesting tidbits, right? Despite all the hype around IoT that we have been seeing for the last 4 or 5 years, like 75% of the IoT projects are still failing. And the reason for the majority of the respondents in surveys, they are quoting the reason is not the lack of technology or technical competence in a way. It's there, it's partially a reason, but that's not the primary reason. The primary reason for the success or failure is the collaboration between various groups. So IoT inherently means IT plus OT, information technology plus operational technology. So the people out there in the field, doing the field work, mostly like physical work, the blue collar part of the jobs, right? So they are considered as like OT, the field hands-on technologies, and white collar, the back office guys, the IT folks, they are like IT nationally, right? So there's always going to be a friction between coordination because it's like 6 versus 9 debate. Like, okay, I'm seeing the world from my perspective from this side, you are seeing the world from your perspective on the other side. There's never an agreement. While leading some of the drone projects during last 2 years at Cisco, I found that like first hand. So what would happen is like we propose some automation project that hey, using commercial drones, you can do the survey. Let's talk about like security survey, physical security survey of the site. Instead of human beings running in the cars, driving around the big parking lots and all that, just fly around drones. I mean, it's much simpler, much easier. Somebody can control them or they can be automated and you have an audit trail of the exact footage of what the machine saw and what it did not see, right? It looks cool on paper. And where do you have to go for the approval of that project? To the very same security in charge, the physical security in charge. That hey, whether this solution, can it replace your security staff? Now logically thinking, what is the guy going to say? Like, you are asking me to eventually fire my own team, right? It's obvious, right? You are basically coming to me for approval that, hey, can I fire my team? And what's my answer going to be? No, this solution does not work. Okay, yeah, it's so deficient. Okay. And there are like tens and hundreds of different reasons why it does not work. And it happens in every single industry. Cellular tower inspections, precision agriculture, every single industry. Because eventually, some part of the population is going to lose jobs because of this automation. Automation kills some kind of jobs. It's a fact. Historically, that's how it has been. But it also brings out new kind of jobs. But it requires like reskilling and training and a lot of other things. But the reason there is like people are still opposed to this IT and OT merger. But whenever they were able to achieve good collaboration, only those IoT projects were successful. And also tying them with business outcomes. That's another thing which was a key element. But despite all that, still the number one use case in the IoT land, which is successful, which has been growing ever since, is the smart home. And that brings out to the third point. Actually, we saw the brain as the AI, we saw the sensor systems as the IoT. But what actually bridges them together, that's the voice part. Voice is the natural interface which kind of brings them together. We can do a lot of things with the mobile apps, with touch and sometimes like automatic sensors and you bring out of your pocket and traffic and all that. But being able to issue voice commands and able to receive the voice responses, that's really the powerful thing. As they say, the voice is new touch. And why? It's very compelling reasons, 3 reasons. On one side, it's very natural and intuitive. It's very easy to say things and hear things. There is a very little cognitive overhead that you have to go through. So for example, if I'm having a mobile app, I need to open the screen or look at it and then touch it. So at least 2 of my senses got occupied in there. My eyes and my physical touch. With voice, it's only one of the sense is basically occupying that, hey, just do this, saying commands. So it's a less cognitive overhead on the brain, which is easier to adopt. So that's one part. Some people say it's like even if you are a super fast the typist, right? You can type on average about 40 words per minute. Versus you can speak more than 150 words per minute. So in terms of the bandwidth of the channel, if you say, right, the issuing commands and getting responses, you are at least about 4 times higher in terms of capacity. Second reason is it's an additional channel. So some of the use cases what we have discussed as part of my startup journey, people are working on the factory floor. Their hands are busy, their eyes are busy, they are working either on screens, factory floor assembling something. They can still issue voice commands as an additional channel, bypassing. They do not have to distract themselves from the primary work they are doing. They can use voice as an additional channel versus other channels in the past. They had to go away from something and do it and then come back. So there was a context switch overhead as well. I mean, that's the reason why navigation systems had this voice in our cars for like more than 20 years now. I mean, they're not super well done, but yeah, still. The reason for their existence is that you don't have to distract yourself while driving. You can still find the directions using voice commands. And the third important reason is the technology advancements. I mean, previous iterations of all the voice systems, they were really horrible. I mean, the voice which was produced, it was like a machine-like voice. I mean, you would not like to hear that voice at all. Also on the recognition side, I mean, if you are speaking with an accent, forget about it. Like, okay, it's like never ever recognized. Your voice is like, you have to ask and repeat the same question again and again 3-4 times, and even then machine will give up after that. So those 3 are very compelling reasons why people say it's like voice is going to be the new touch. And they expect, like in the future, more than 50% will get rid of all the cell phones and screens, even though Apple is releasing version after version, bigger screens, smaller screens, this, that. Eventually, all the screens are going to go away. That's one of the predictions, that everything is going to be screenless. And that's the future. And there are some evidences also to back to that claim. So just on the smart speaker market, like right now already, all the Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant and Google Home, so already 20% of the population, US adult population, they own at least one smart speaker. Of the population that owns one smart speaker, 33% actually owns more than 2. So one for the bedroom, one for, just like TV. Originally when TVs came out back in the 70s and 80s, there was like one television per family in the prime meeting place, right? And then like, hey, every room started getting one of its own. So same thing is happening in the smart speaker market as well. Like one initially started with kitchen or living room, and then say, hey, this is useful, so get me for my bedroom and for other room and all that. And people are trying to use, like, look at the stats, it's like 63% daily users and 77% weekly users. So that's pretty good engagement for any technology, forget like voice. So, and people are using for many, many different reasons. Many of you might have seen this Google Duplex demo, who have seen it like earlier this year. Sundar Pichai, there was a very interesting demo, an AI system using the voice interface. It calls a barber shop for a haircut and like books the appointment completely in an autonomous way without any human assistance. And there was another example of a restaurant. So booking a table for 4, and the restaurant was taking only the bookings for more than 5. So it was okay, just finding out the less busy hours and more busy hours on its own. So, and it all was so natural that the other person on the other side of the regular phone call, they did not realize that it's the machine voice that I'm talking to. It's not a human voice. It sounded very close to human voice. So technology is making all that happen, all that possible today. And some of the facts on the voice side is like, this year was a historic milestone. In January they hit the 1 billion voice searches per month. And where they are coming from? So this is a prediction that 30% of the searches by 2020, so just 2 years away, they'll be done without a screen. And in fact, Google released a statement earlier this year saying 50%, more than 50% of the searches coming from the mobile devices, they are already voice searches, even today. And it's growing. So Siri or Alexa or Google, doesn't matter what's your favorite endpoint is, but the reason is voice is becoming inherently common, increasingly common as a medium for interaction with technology. Another fact is this 46% of the voice search users. So especially all the yellow pages and local business things. So they look up information using voice search as opposed to Google Maps or other Yelp or any other sites. And a follow on to that stat is almost half of those people who look up, they make a phone call to their local business after that. So no wonder why Google and Alexa, they started adding phone call capabilities in their smart speakers. It was not there originally, but they discovered these facts and they started adding like, hey, now you can make a phone call from there. It's very intuitive, obvious, and less overhead for people. Another fact is 72%, they are saying they are using it as part of their daily routine. So it's pretty much the inseparable part of their day-to-day life. It's checking for the weather, checking for schedules and calendars and timers and kitchen recipes, lots of use cases which were never thought of as like voice cases before, but now they are increasingly becoming mainstream in your day-to-day life. And the last one is by next year, 39% of the millennials, they will use all the voice-enabled digital, which is a pretty significant percentage. And they're already there. It's not like they're far off and this is a bold claim. No. We are somewhere close to like 35% range already today. So whether we like it or not, but that's going to be the future. So essentially, and I was like shamelessly, I had to pull out this slide from my startup deck because it addresses the issue and it gives the clear picture. All this, the trio of these technologies, AI, IoT, and voice. The combination is going to be a killer combination for both technological growth, our lifestyle changes, business opportunities, career opportunities, anything, you name it. That is where the future seems to be going ahead. And there are a few other technologies, no doubts about it, but almost close to $1 trillion business value is going to be coming from IoT, AI, and voice together. Even the Gartners, right, the strategic predictions, it's not apparent, but if you look closely, I mean, many of them are already tagged with AI or IoT. But if you look something else, like search, for example, even though it's tagged with search, what it says is visual and voice search actually drive the commerce. So the reason Amazon is winning in the voice game so far is they have the commerce also tied with the voice search. People are buying things off of Amazon. How many of you in the room are using Amazon purchases through voice? Anybody? Not yet. So, but a lot of millennials are already making a regular habit of making their purchases through voice. So voice commerce is also a very big deal. So essentially, like what we saw from generation of technology to current day, things are moving in this three-way, this nice pattern, right? Previously it was all the hand-related jobs, like physical, hard work, blue-collar jobs. Then they went away and moved to more of a majority of the head-related jobs, the rational, cognitive skills, those type of jobs, all the IT skills, white-collar jobs. With development of AI, IoT, and voice, even those are actually going away. And things are moving more to the heart-centric job, which machines cannot obviously match just yet. They are trying the language-related things today. I mean, AIs can write articles from nothing today. They can write blog posts today. Some law firms, they have AI chatbots as the legal paralegal assistants hired today. So those things are happening, but it's still no way closer to those hard part of the human skills. So humans are still very much unique in that sense. So the next round of challenges, next round of the jobs or the careers or where the puck is moving, it's going to be in the heart-centric, more emotional side of the society. That's where things are going to have human overpowering machines. In fact, one of the very good article in recent HBR, it's the July-August of this year, HBR issue. So the author has nicely narrated this three, more of a collaborative spirit, like the future, because of this hand to head to heart movement, the future is going to be more collaborative between humans and machines. It's not like machines are going to take away and kick out all the humans. No. there are certain skills where humans are still needed, but we need to grow into and modify our skill sets into those skills in order to survive and thrive and during those days. So the author gives very clear examples, like 3 examples here. The humans assisting machines is like, how can you train? I mean, all intelligent AI systems, they require a lot of training, a lot of data sets, a lot of tweaking and more of a heuristics building in and all that. So that's where humans are actually helping today, right? When you are having a facial recognition or like more of a picture identification, object identification through computer vision, you need to tell, okay, which is cat, which is dog. It's a classification problem. So that's one kind of training that humans can help assist machines. Second is all the explaining part. One of the downside of AI is it's considered as a black box, and there's a huge debate on that aspect as well, especially on the regulatory side. The self-driving car, one of the bottlenecks is given the predictable inputs, can an AI system generate predictable outputs? And answer is no. Because the way the models are built, the way the neural networks inside, the deep learning networks inside are built, nobody can predictively say that, hey, if I give these 5 inputs, the system is predictively going to react in exactly this manner. All of our regulatory framework so far has been built on this predictiveness of things. That, hey, if it's, when you say it's 99% accurate, it means it's every 99 out of 100, it should be verifiable that all 99 instances out of 100 test cases, it must comply to certain outcomes. Autonomous cars are an exception in that sense, that there is no explanation, and for that matter, it's any generic AI system, there is no explanation. Like why AI system took certain decision, explain. System itself is a black box, it cannot explain, but humans who work on the system, they can have that job of explaining. So that's an explainer profile job which might come out as a result of the AI. And the third thing is the sustaining part as well. So how do you prevent these systems from being compromised and make sure they are operating as they are supposed to operate? Otherwise, like we see in the movies, right, the machines take over the humanity and all, like, okay, start skilling and going around and all that. So I mean, we want to prevent even slightest progress in that direction, and that's where humans are going to be policing that part of it. And on the flip side, machines assisting humans, that's also equally important. And there we know amplifying our cognitive decision-making abilities, that's one part. Interacting with like a boring task. So, I mean, all the IVR systems on the phone, I mean, we have been bored enough with them, right, so far.
Question, do you think humans will be able to police AI after 20 years?
Well, what I think or not doesn't really matter, frankly speaking.
Based on your
yeah, I mean, after 20 years, it's very difficult. It's going to be challenging because of the inherent complexity. It boils down to the earlier graph I was showing, and the question was whether humans will be able to police AI systems. It depends on how, actually, from a regulatory perspective, how the evolution happens. If we reach that singularity point, for example, right, where machines, at least for the large part, non-hard, non-emotional skills, for example, just the physical and cognitive skills. On those skills, if machines surpass the human abilities, then there is no way for human beings to cope up with that kind of acceleration. At the end of the day, it's machine. But humans still have the way of dealing with things in a completely different, unpredictable way. That is going to be the positive. For example, pulling the plug out of a socket, boom, the machine cannot function without that unless it's a battery backup, and removing the battery. So you can physically damage an AI system to a certain degree. That's just an example. But cognitively, it's going to be very difficult if we follow on that path. It's going to be 20 years is a little short time frame. In 20 years, I think we will be able to. In 50 years, maybe it's going to be a little less, more doubtful that way. And the third part is an interesting thing. It's actually embodying with the humans and machines. So a new concept which is coming out as, like, instead of robots, it's called cobots. So not man versus machine, but man and machine. So robot is actually working with humans in a cooperative manner, and they are sharing the load. So the best of both worlds are being recognized. And I think Mercedes-Benz is already trying out some of these cobots in their factories as we speak. This week on Monday, the World Economic Forum released this jobs report, and there are like interesting tidbits inside as well. So today, humans and robots work division is 71-29. By 2022, it's going to be like 58 and 42, and 2025, it's going to be at least 55% work will be done by robots. So there will be a crossover point where in any organization on average, how much work is being performed by robots or these machine intelligence systems versus human beings. So the crossover point is somewhere going to happen in between 2022 and 25, according to World Economic Forum. And as a result of that, what they're saying is at least 55% of the human population, the workforce, will have to reskill themselves as a result of job loss. So the traditional jobs will no longer be there. What we have been doing for past 50 years will no longer be there in the next 10, 20 years. So we have to upgrade ourselves as well as a result of that. And there's a varying degree, like out of those 55%, they are saying like still majority will have to undergo at least 1 year of training. Half of them like would have to undergo 6 months training, half of them 3 months training. I mean, those are all just numbers, but the big number is very critical. It's like 55% of the workforce will have to undergo skill set upgrading as a result of this robots and machine intelligence things taking over. So what should be the mindset as we go into this kind of future? There's only one solution out there: continuously upgrading ourselves, innovating relentlessly on our own individual side. I mean, we might be innovating in our corporates, on the projects and the tools and technologies, but innovating on oneself, that's equally important as we are going into these uncertainties. And a very interesting definition, I always loved it, this perfect definition of innovation. So every single word is critical. It's an action. It's not just like discussion. Like a lot of people, when they talk about innovation, it's all big PowerPoint presentations and meetings and forums and all. But no, it's about action. And it's about solving problems. There are tons of problems, but what can you do with it? Right? Can you come up with a solution, at least some feasible solution? That's what real innovation needs. And then relevant problems. There could be many, many different problems, but what is the relevant problems for you in the current context? And novel ways, contextually novel ways. There has to be something new, some novelty in your solution. Otherwise, a great quote I always admired is like, if you keep doing what you have been doing, you will keep getting what you have been getting. It's a common sense thing. But we still expect different outcomes while we are feeding in the same results and same efforts. No, it's not going to happen. If you want a different outcome, we need to feed in with different inputs. So the novel ways, and last part is also very critical. It's ways, it's plural. So there are always, most of the cases, multiple ways of solving a problem. There's not a single way all the time. So think from different perspectives. Think out of the box. Think from a different mindset, and that's where we have heard like a lot about this whole growth mindset, and there's great books on top of that and all. But I think it's more of a solving the problems, not being defeated by the problems. Solving and taking care of the challenges head on instead of being backed by them, like, hey, I'm being puzzled by them, because at the end of the day, it's the effort. Everybody's smart, especially in Silicon Valley. The average smartness is very, very high. Everybody's smart. So what differentiates one from the other? The differentiation factor is the effort. How much effort we are willing to put in. And that's what Mr. Winston Churchill also said, the same thing. It's like, it's the effort, not the skills. I mean, those things matter initially, but compared to effort, nothing else can stand in its way. And I particularly love this last equation, right? I mean, many people say, hey, it's incorrect mathematically and practically and all that, but still, if you continuously improve 1% just for 1 year from what you were individually yesterday, you become 1% better today, you become 1% better than yourself tomorrow, and so on and so forth. You'll be better like 3,700% in a year's time frame. That's a huge lot. And on the flip side, if you go on a slippery slope and start to make worse choices, bad decisions in your life, you end up with just 3 if you start from 100. So choice is really ours. Like, where do we want to go? I mean, the entire landscape is shifting as we speak. There are talks about this AIs and machines and all those things taking over. There are talks about job loss. There are talks about even the job profile shifting, the way of doing things differently, millennials coming into the workforces and having different way of doing things, like bring your own devices was like the initial pain point, right? Most of us dealt with in the IT systems and subsystems and like how the security works and all. But amidst all these complexities and constraints, there is always a silver lining, right? Because the rainbows happen only in cloudy skies. And the same thing is true with IT innovations as well. It's no different. Whenever there are constraints, whenever there are challenges, only that's when the good things come out of it. Otherwise, it's a business as usual. There is no forcing function for us. I mean, we are very comfortable species. Like human beings are great at enjoying comforts, right? So unless there is a forcing function for us to do, motivating us to do something different, we will not be doing those things differently. As simple as that. So change is good in that sense. And that's my last question to you is, are we really ready for the ride? I mean, it's uncertain times, but I'm sure we can deal with that. Thank you.
Play jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember? Dentist. At 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're gonna do one more.
Oh yeah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open. Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey! Open door!
Play on the floor.
Get over the door! Open the door!
Wrong voice command. Error.
Hey there. With a rock? Open door. Open door. Open door. Open door. Higher.
Higher volume.
Higher.
Higher.
Cool. So we'll open up for questions if any. If you're not tired already. Yes, sir.
I had a question. So all of the AI and robotics conversations that you had, it was usually focused around people and processes. And so mostly around how to improve things for ourselves, right? To provide us things, to make things easier for us. However, there was one part where you talked about Big Blue and the AI for competition, where we were actually building AI and robotics to compete with us, which is a little different. So would you say that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, we're going to talk about whether or not we can kind of keep a lid on this? Do you believe that that's really dependent on whether we continue down the trajectory of simply making life easier for ourselves? And how would that differ if we go down the path which some people have of replacing us and everything we can do, and not just things that make things easier?
Right. Another great point, actually. So AI there is a reason why it's growing and accelerating, right? I mean, it does solve real world problems as well. Sometimes they are never ever solved before. So, for example, like I was talking to there is a startup, stealth mode startup in the Bay Area. They have found out a technology that from human bloodstream, just by scanning the bloodstream regularly, they can identify 99% of the early stage cancers. Now, it has never ever happened in the past. They have clinical proofs as well. So even FDA is willing to give them sponsorship that, hey, this is beneficial for mankind in general. I mean, no medication has been able to detect any kind of cancer so early in the game. But based on the AI systems and based on some pattern recognitions and based on some identifiers, they are able to do that so effectively. And same thing goes for many other domains. I mean, so the reason why they are growing is there are some genuine cases where it solves some real problems, right? That's one part. But as it happens with any technology, there are always going to be the side effects and misuses. So some people are always following the right path and like focusing for the benefit of the humanity. There are some rogue elements always in the society that we are, okay, how can you tweak this piece of technology and use it to make it worse? So it's a constant battle going on, and sometimes like beyond certain point, there is a very difficult phenomenon to put a cap on that genie, on that bottle, to stop people from doing that. So take an example, like my favorite one, like drones. So drones are considered good commercial drones. Like, hey, you can do the crop monitoring, agriculture monitoring, and this and that, and deliveries and pizza delivery, and all nice things, right? Then people started using them for drug delivery, weapons delivery in prisons. So they just fly and a commercial off the shelf, like a very cheap drone. They hook up like drugs and weapons and just drop the entire drone in the prison, in the courtyard. That's it. Like, okay, pick it up. I don't care if I lose my drone. I mean, it's a cheap one. But that's like a misuse of technology. Same thing in US-Mexico border, like a lot of those drug cartels who were using tunnels, they started using drones now. Like, hey, even if you get shot, it's okay. There is no human that is captured, right? So sometimes the technology itself is not bad, but the use of and application of technologies, it's bad. And unfortunately, many times you cannot even prevent it and protect it. It's again the bad inside us that comes out occasionally.
Isn't that exactly what all of us do day in and day out from the security perspective?
It is.
Right? There's always the conversation around how the technology can be used for defense or offense, right? The hacker side and the defense
Exactly,
side.
all the white hat and black hat.
But we managed to maintain, depending on your point of view, and we have for decades, right? So do you think maybe the future for the people who are afraid that the robots will take over, like Elon, and then others who feel it's making life better, that the reality is on the negative side, for every drone that shoots you if you try to unplug the robot, there'll be another drone that shoots that drone, and it's that same never-ending escalation.
Exactly. I mean, it's always like a cat and mouse game going on, but the kind of damage you can do is like a first mover's advantage, right? Sometimes, like, yeah, you can shoot that drone down, but what if it drops a new bomb before that, right? So, yeah, that drone gets killed, but it did its damage. So, it's too late, too little type of thing. So, the primary reason it's different this time is the amount of computation power these systems can harness. That's very, very dangerous piece. Not everybody has that ability. Previously, so far things were limited by the amount of computation capability. So neural networks and deep learning, that is nothing new. I mean, those algorithms came out in 60s and 70s, but there was not enough compute power at that time to prove the worth of it, that yes, it indeed works. More recent, in last 10 years, we have been able to achieve those breakthrough results. And that's what is proliferating this whole AI thing. But how far it goes in the future and how many people, how much percentage of the population is going to have access to a level playing field? It is not going to be a level playing field the way it's growing, the way the compute power is being harnessed. So unless it's a level playing field, it's very difficult to compete. So regulatory process is one way of it. But I mean, you guys know better than anybody else, is like how archaic all the government regulatory systems themselves are, right? Some of them are still running Windows 95.
We should let them make the robots.
That would be a good solution, actually.
And the risk is that, see, using AI for legal versus illegal purposes or immoral purposes is one thing, and using AI and tweaking certain things to work in opposite direction. For example, automated car, right? Someone hacks the car and puts his to drive in the wrong direction, harming other cars or something like that. It would not be a bigger challenge than, I mean, right now, if something is hacked, you lose money. I mean, so far I don't think hackers have caused life-threatening incidents. Some maybe, but not too many. Most of the hacking happens for the monetary gain or destruction of certain systems.
Luckily, greed beats fear and punishment.
Yeah, definitely. But then, as soon as we become more smarter, AI comes, it can be used for destructive purposes in humankind.
It's our
No,
place.
that it's a large space, and the problem is, like one of the slides I mentioned, it's non-traceable. So the black box nature of AI, that's making it more dangerous. Like, who did it? it's not easy to identify with AI system versus non-AI system. So non-AI system, yes, you have a track record, you can trace and audit logs, and yes, you can follow the standard procedure. You can pinpoint that exactly so and so time, so and so individual did this. With AI systems, it's not that straightforward. So you cannot pinpoint that who did what at what time. And it's a highly distributed nature. I mean, look at it for all the Russian meddling issue, right? Like President being investigated for the last 2 years almost, right, in the elections. It doesn't matter which side of the issue you are on, but it's a wide-ranging issue, right? The way you affect a broad range of systems, whether you do affect or not, at least like Russia, China, they have the ability to take the damage. Whether they did it or not, that's a different story, but they do have the ability. And right now, China is #1 in AI, actually. It's way ahead than US and Russia both. So the global political climate is going to be affected by crimes like that, and whether in the small environment we are able to do certain governing and regulations, it's always going to be trumped by what happens in the macro level.
So kind of tagging on what you said, though, from the AI, from your AI experience, what I don't see people doing is trying to incorporate the rules. The rules they've done now have been learning rules, the rules of the game, the rules of driving a car down the road, and not necessarily rules that govern the limitation of going outside of those boundaries, especially when we get into self-learning systems, right? So taking a page out of Asimov, I mean, some of the foundational rules he laid down really were the thought process behind not letting the robots get ahead. And I don't think we're actually even considering that. I think we go right toward features, capabilities, and solving problems, and not looking at the inherent morality issues. We go for the technical issues, and maybe that at some point, hopefully before the tipping point, that becomes something we integrate, maybe legally, maybe programmatically, to set those rules, because again, the AI still has to follow the rules, right?
Yeah, right on. Actually, the self-driving car, right now, it's the debate why it's like taking so long is like, okay, if the car itself is driving and it hits somebody, right? Simple question like that. Like, who is at fault? Right? So that simple question is not so simple from a regulatory perspective to answer, right? Like whether is the car at fault, or car's owner at fault, or whoever was operating the car at fault, or the car was operating on its own, then whom to blame, right?
Or an anonymous piece of software was...
Exactly, or somebody injected some piece of software inside, like which kind of overtook. What is the proof? Like who can prove in a predictive manner that this happened versus that happened? So like simple thing about like ownership rules, that's why our DMV is like struggling really hard for so many years. And in terms of allowing those cars on the road, generally speaking, right? Like insurance guys, who they report the claim to, how do they tag along the driving habits of individuals now? I mean, the whole system needs to change. I mean, if you make an accident, your premiums go up, typically in the past. Now, autonomous cars, you're not driving it, so...
Right, and the way they've done it with cars in the past is the person responsible for the action. The unfortunate part is now suddenly there's not a person responsible for the action.
Exactly, yeah, there's no individual attached with the vehicle anymore, or system. Yes, sir.
A similar concern applies to using an algorithm to engage in the job selection and the interview process in HR, or in some kinds of pricing algorithms, or in an algorithm that evaluates creditworthiness or suitability to rent a partner, because there could be discrimination involved, and the designer of the algorithm designed it in a subtle way to exclude people, and then be able to claim that it's not a human who did this, but a machine who made the decision to discriminate against blacks, or Hispanics, or Asians, or any particular group.
Exactly, yeah. No, very true. I mean, that's one of the downside of black box AI algorithms. You cannot like pinpoint who did what.
I have a quick question. First of all, I appreciate the education around the IoT and the AI. One of your slides showed voice being the bridge between the two. So legacy technologies, and I'm thinking from an IT security perspective here, the technologies can they be retrofitted to take advantage of this, or does it need to be written from the ground up to be able to take advantage of the AI?
So, Yes. I have two answers for that. If I'm thinking from an engineering perspective, generally speaking, it's better to do it right from the scratch instead of retrofitting the existing things. That's usually much more cleaner solutions. You can think better, think through all the use cases and potential impacts and all that. On the flip side, from a business perspective, that's never ever a choice, hardly ever. It's always like retrofitting the existing technologies is usually preferred compared to kind of getting the brand new technology from scratch, because everything has its own unknowns. So it's more of a dealing with the known devil than the unknown devil. That mindset takes over. So retrofitting the existing technology would be the more likely path of how things are going to evolve, in my opinion. Right? And there are like front-end ways and back. I mean, look at how the whole web and API ecosystem came along. Right? Previously, there were no APIs for any of the subsystems. But suddenly, all the mobile apps and everything required, or web API required, like, okay, some access to that closed system. So then selectively the APIs opened up and allowed the access for that subsystem, and then you saw the dashboards and nice like single pane of glass views and ability to interact with that subsystem from a remote location through mobile app and all that. So out of need and out of promise, things change. So same way, out of need and promise, things are going to change for better using the AI and voice technology as well. To give you an example, right, like simple like firewall rules or security profiles, right? Some of my colleagues had demoed like using voice, you can specify that, hey, change the security profile, or in this room, like, okay, disable guest user access, boom, one command and boom, it just takes care of it. I don't have to log in into any system. As long as I can verify my credentials that, hey, I'm authorized to give that command. So that simplicity and that disconnectedness with the knowing the location of the system, logging in and issuing the command, it's like more over it, versus this is more intuitive and obvious. So things are going to rotate in that favor eventually.
So, great. Part B of the question is that what your company, that's what your organization does, is help enablement of being able to tie legacy to voice?
So we are dealing with the hardware-based systems, not necessarily software. Software-based systems are easier to do, and many other players are doing it already. But what we are trying to achieve is making it easy for any hardware, for example, this camera or this lights or this projector. If I want to voice enable today, what are my choices? Right? So that's what we try to do. Piece of hardware we can recommend, and then suddenly that projector becomes Alexa enabled, and you can say, here, bring out your mobile app and say, Alexa, turn off the projector, and it will turn off the projector. You forgot and you issue the command from your home that, hey, I forgot to turn off the projector. You can still do it from there. You don't have to be physically here to press the button anymore, right? So that's the value prop of being able to do things from wherever you are using whatever mode of access you have at your disposal.
It's more related to voice and IoT. So in today's world, what we do is we try to send information that we are not going to use, or we try to not write down the passwords and be smart that way. So once you start over with voice, you're issuing voice command, and anybody who's standing like next to you, listening to what you're saying, can just collect information and commit crimes like identity theft and stuff like that. How do you solve such problems? Other than being smart, not talking about it.
Right. So I mean, there would be some self-regulating behavioral changes, right? That affect. I mean, it's obvious. Like somebody asks you, I mean, in a crowded room, somebody says, okay, some rep says, what is your social security number? I mean, you are talking on the phone, your social security number or your credit card number today?
No, we don't.
Right. So I mean,
other than being smart like that.
Right. So it's more of a system cannot provide that contextual smartness. Like what is important to you may not be important to the other person, right? So for example, if I'm a call service guy, call center operator, for me my instruction is need to get the social security number of that person. For me, capturing that information is more important. For you, disclosing that information is not at all important. It's actually works against you, right? So our mutual interests are different depending on which side we are on. System is the same. So underlying system, it's very hard to make a judgment call on that front. So that intelligence has to reside at some higher level entity.
But forget the data transfer, think about the authentication, right? If she wants to have that projector turn off, and it just requires a voice to do it. There's no authentication. Are we rolling that backwards now?
Oh, no, there is authentication. So it's a security is inbuilt. But I think what the way I understood is like, especially when you are talking a lot, there is information leakage possibility much more than before, right? And some kind of information, so far at least it's more of a normal use cases like turning on the lights and off and setting the thermostats and opening the garage door and closing and issuing those day-to-day things. They are considered more harmless in that nature, and they are for now and more useful, at least achieving certain tasks. In the future, yes, when it goes beyond certain level, there may be some guidelines or some restrictions might be placed, some obfuscation comes into picture and all that, like two-factor authentication. For example, one of the voice demos we did is like changing the security profile, for example, right? Now, anybody can issue that command. Somebody might have recorded my voice also and issued that command, right? Those things are all possible. So go with the traditional two-factor authentication, like, okay, send you a one-time password or a key or fingerprint or some other things, like secondary mechanism saying that exactly whoever is issuing the command is a genuine person.
You need a screen for that, because there's no more screens.
Today.
So I think this topic is, I think it's an amazing topic. I think we covered very nicely artificial intelligence and then IoT and then introduced the voice, and then we did a fantastic job. Let's give a great hand.